So guys, welcome back to the All Gains podcast. We have a very special guest today. We have KK Reaper. He is a musician. He's in the music industry. He's coming out with a new album soon. You got to check it out. So without further ado, KK Reaper, where have you been? Where are you going? Tell the audience who you are.
Hello, audience. First off, thank you for having me.
Oh, it's no problem. Pleasure's ours.
Guys.
What we do.
My name is KK Reaper. I am a mix of a jack of all trades, I guess. You know, I do a little bit of music, a little bit of film, makeup effects. I ran the Haunted Manor in Keensburg for 8 years. Been in one band prior to this, and then recently went solo. And that's about it for me.
Okay, so let's go into this. Who are your musical aspirations? I'm very curious.
Inspirations?
What sonically, like, and stylistically, like, what inspired, like, the music that you make right now? Like, any, like, artists or anything, or is it just all off the top of your head?
So, it's definitely, I will say this, for better or for worse, the music that I'm putting out now is definitely something that I've never heard really done before. You know, good or bad is subjective, but the influences I do take from, and I you'll notice, like, if you listen to some of the songs, especially on the new album, I put a lot of nuances from my favorite artist in there, especially with the space theme that I've been going with. David Bowie has been a huge influence, especially, like, style-wise, and so, I mean, like, he was such a, like, pop icon. Throughout the decades, and, like, all the, you know, lavish outfits and the makeup and stuff like that. I loved every aspect of that. I was listening to a lot of David Bowie during the writing of A New Era, which is the new album. Outside of him, you know, I hate to say it now, especially with all the allegations going on, but Marilyn Manson was, like, definitely musically, and again, like, performance-wise and all that, he was a big influence, like, on the track Orbit. That was based off of Irresponsible Hate Anthem. I was listening to that while we were recording. And if you notice, like, I sent you guys the MP3s of the demos and stuff. The sound varies from track to track.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
And it jumps all around, and it was kind of where my mind was at, like, during the recording process. Like, I was just all over the place in my own life, so it kind of reflected in the album. But the each song, like, I have a playlist on Spotify that is all the influences, and you can hear each one. Like, you know, Gravitational Pull has the line, don't be afraid, no one is saved, it's better to burn out than to fade away. Better to burn out than to fade away is Neil Young. Yeah. You know, stuff like that. I threw it. Dude Looks Like a Lady. Yeah. in the song Concessions. That's, you know, Aerosmith.
Yeah.
So, you know, it was weird. You know, I was listening to certain songs as we were recording, and since COVID kind of put a hold on the recording process, like when the lockdown was, like, real deal, it gave me a lot of time to, like, listen to all these artists over the months that we recorded, and that's why this album is so, like, rapidly different from song to song. It gave me, like, so many opportunities, and obviously, like, you know, the top ones for the album, I would say David Bowie, Alice Cooper, Manson, Zombie, Ozzy, you know, Play That Funky Music, White Boy was one of the songs that influenced Political Bukkake.
Yeah.
Like, you know, just with the bass line and stuff, like, very bass oriented and stuff. So it's all over the place as far as that goes.
Yeah, you were in a band called KK Reaper and the Carnies of Chaos. Can you tell us a little bit about the history of that?
Yeah, like, how it began, and, like, you know, how it went from what it was in the beginning to what it came to be before you went solo.
Yeah, so when I started KK Reaper and the Carnies of Chaos, I didn't actually know that was going to be the name. I actually started out just as KK Reaper when I was getting into the music scene. And 2015 rolled along. It was my senior year of high school, and I wanted to do the coffee house, the Raritan Coffee House. And so I put a band of people together. I said, like, I said at the time, like, it's just a one-time thing. Just come together, do these 5 songs. It was all Alice Cooper. We did, like, an Alice Cooper tribute set. And let's just have a good time doing it and see where it goes. And so we did the show. That was the moment I realized like I love the stage. I love performance art. I loved like the interaction with the crowd and stuff. I think I'm the only person that can say that they got their head cut off in their school, and that they also started a mosh pit in their cafeteria.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
so we started out like that, and as I was editing the footage from that show and putting it together and putting it through I was in my TV production class, and I was talking to my teacher, asking him about like I don't want it to just be KK Reaper because I want to be inclusive of like the people in the band. And so I was spitballing out ideas and stuff, and I was like, what about Carnies of Chaos? And he was like, that's got a really good, KK Reaper and the Carnies of Chaos has like a good phonetic ring to it. So we went with that without even thinking about like the ringleader outfit and all that. So right at the beginning, it was pretty much just Alice Cooper tribute, me dressed up as just with a different name. Like we didn't want to do a name that would be attached to like an Alice Cooper song or something like that. We wanted it to be like our own thing, just dedicated to that. But as time went on, and as I went through countless drummers, guitarists, like because it always started out, it was like down in George's basement. We were just like practicing and stuff.
Yeah.
So as we rolled with that, people came and go, and they were like, I don't really like Alice Cooper. It's a niche market to find.
Yeah.
And we got past that point to where we got like steady people. I met the drummer Nick. I met him at like Uptown Bar, and we hit it off, and he was really cool. Rory, Macy, Tanner, we got all together, and that was like the solidified group towards like 2016, somewhere around that bracket. And we spent the next 4 years pretty much just working on the sound, the look, the lore, the story, all that stuff. And that brought us up to 2019, where we like started playing shows. We released the Admit One album with like Bangin' in Lord's Backyard, Ain't No Race, all those songs. And then that was pretty much, we did gigs for that set year from October 2018 to October 2019. And then November 2019, we started working on the second album, and that's where we kind of like tapered off. So after that was when I started like, I had a lot of things going on besides that with like drinking and stuff like that. So I had to get myself fixed up, pull myself together, kind of get my life together. And once the band was dispersed, that's when I started going solo, and then COVID hit. So it kind of, that's where a new era comes in.
Yeah. What's the kind of like the struggles of making an album? What's the struggles like? Does it affect you like mentally? Is it like a lot of pressure or?
It is definitely very draining, especially if it's, it's easy to put out a song. It's another thing to really sit down with it and, make it something that's like a part of you. And so when you're making songs that relate back to your life, like this whole album from beginning to end was everything that I had gone through from pretty much like 2015 to now. And so writing all these songs and putting them together in the way that we did, and basically reliving all those moments by listening to it, almost like watching my listening to my life. But the album, obviously, as you know, is like set up kind of almost like a musical. It kind of goes into the storyline aspect of it.
Yeah.
And listening back to that is like listening to like my autobiography, And so that was definitely like very weird and very emotional for me. And especially at the end, up until recently, I wrote the song A New Era, which is completely instrumental. That's the last track on the album. And that was written with my grandmother in mind, who was sick at the time that I had started writing it and started recording it, and then she passed away. So that is like another, like I've listened to that album in its entirety, and like I don't want to sound like it's like an ego thing. Like it's not narcissistic. Like I said, it's not bad or good, but it makes me like I get to that last track and I've actually like teared up at the end of the album, because I'm like, this was a year and a half, and now it's just here. And it's everything that has gone on from beginning to end. So yeah, definitely recording process, you get into a lot of fights in the studio. I've definitely
There's a lot of clashing, between how you want to do the styles of each song, or is there like a lot of collaboration? Obviously, a lot of collaboration involved, but everyone I'm sure has a say on what decision should be made. And does it get a little hectic in the room? The room.
So it's not as bad when you're working, as a solo artist, because ultimately at the end of the day, whatever I'm happy with is what becomes the final product.
Yeah.
It's definitely. Not to say that like collaborative efforts aren't needed to some degree, and like that was the whole thing, was that I would demo out a song, because I know like guitar, piano. I like mainly my main things are vocals and piano. I know guitar a little bit, I know bass a little bit, enough to demo out a track, and then I bring in my musician friends and I have them kind of fine tune it, record, add their own nuances and touches to it. So. For the most part, it's pretty streamlined, and I use the term fighting loosely, because when I say that, it's really not like, maybe in the year and a half that I was working with Teeds and Tanner, which are like they're mixing and mastering the album, we may have had like one or two like really bad days, and one of those days was because I had just recently gotten sober, so I was like still in my crazed mode, and I was like fuck that, like just getting real like heated. But for the most part, it's pretty streamlined. The main thing that was ever an issue is that I firmly believe, and I forget who says the quote, but art is never finished, it's just abandoned. And that's exactly how I felt about all these songs every time that we would listen back to it, because I was like, you could add like another like a synth there, you could add like another riff here, something like that. And eventually like Teeds and Tanner would look at me and be like, stop. Please stop. Like there's enough on this. Concessions has like the average song has maybe like 12, 15 tracks, because each individual drum, and like that one had like 25, because of just like there's layers of synth, and even though you don't hear it, like it's the fact that I'm listening to it and I'm like, I can hear that. Like, it's just peeking out just a little bit. And they're like, the general audience isn't going to hear. Like, and I was like, I'm not doing it for them. Like, like, it's a little bit for me too. Like, I want to be able to listen back to it and be like, I like that.
Yeah, because like even which is crazy. I had seen this most recently, is that the song "A Little Piece of Heaven" by Avenged Sevenfold, that I think has like over 40 different tracks on it and stuff. Like, that's got like and it's like an 8-minute song or something. It just has so much.
And something that we didn't realize. Well, I mean, the three of us didn't realize, and then as we were starting to bring more people in that had more experience than we did in studios, they talked about like, we only did dual guitar. So when you record the rhythm guitar, you do it twice, you layer it, and then you pan it left and right, so it's got like a good stereo sound.
Yeah.
In some cases, they like quad record that, and that's what gives the guitar like that real like punch. Yeah. Some people do bass, where they record the bass direct in, and then they do like a bass MIDI, so the bass is really punchy. There was like so many things that we just sort of bypassed, and not that it like, I mean, the sound still came out good because the mixing and mastering process went really smoothly, and even fresh out of college, like both Tanner and Teeds really knew what they were doing, and they made it sound like phenomenal. But going forward with the second album, definitely I know what to do now, as far as like you said, like 40 tracks is like 6 layers of vocals, and that's why it sounds so like harmonic, and that's why it gives it that like, you're like, wow, like holy shit, I'm getting like blasted with sound right now.
Yeah. Tell us a little bit about the transition in mindset when it comes to going from a band into a solo act. Tell us a little bit about that.
So, my experience with it was like, obviously like the Carnies of Chaos, we ended on like, not like terrible terms, but it was rough. We had like ins and outs with that. Obviously, it's sort of like breaking up with a girlfriend or a boyfriend or whatever.
Bittersweet.
Yeah, like it definitely, it never goes according to plan. It's never smooth.
Yeah, no.
So the breakup happened, and I was disappointed myself. I was like, it might have had potential, but it was just, the group didn't work together well. We made it look really good on stage.
Yeah.
Behind closed doors,
It's always like that with a lot of bands,
Right.
That they don't
Yeah.
tell you about.
Exactly.
Exactly.
And so we did what we had to do, and everyone went their separate ways, and people started working on their own solo stuff too. Even though Tanner and Nick still joined me on this project with the solo stuff, but like I said, the collaborative effort is good. I think that no matter what you do, solo or band wise, you should always have people to have second, third, fourth opinions with on what you're recording.
It's very good to be, collaborative and sort of see what works, what doesn't work. It's good to get, different opinions, see what, to get.
And the thing about, when you work with a band, you're working with the same 4 or 5 years consistently. And when that happens, they all get the same ear fatigue at the same time. And I noticed that, when we were recording, Admit One and stuff like that, we would listen back to it, and each one of us would have something, we want to raise the guitar, we want to raise the drums, and then we bring the guitar back down, and it's just back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. At least with this, it's a little bit, like I said, a little bit more streamlined, because at the end of the day, whenever everything is said and done, I take the final listen, and then I make my final adjustments, and that's it. Which is, it works out nice. But I miss I'm trying to capture that, even though it's solo and even though it's KK Reaper. I do have my band set up now with Tanner and Nick, and now we've got Marissa on keyboards and Eric on guitar. And I'm still trying to capture, I want to bring them into the storyline. I want to make them part of the composition and stuff like that, and work with them instead of it just being me giving them demos and then them just playing along to it.
Yeah.
So I do still try to capture that band mentality. I still want to be pure rock and roll, all the influences that we had, Motley Crue and stuff like that. It was a band setting. It wasn't just one guy. It was all of them.
Yeah.
So I'm still trying to keep with that and get everyone's opinions in and all that.
You've also had a lot of experience with film, and how's that helped your music career? How does that help you get a little bit better with the way technically, as well as with your mindset and developing new ideas? Has your experience with film sort of made it easier for you to work in the music industry, or do they go both hand in hand?
It does kind of go hand in hand. That's the funny thing with Tanner is his degree was in audiovisual.
Yeah.
So that it's two peas in a pod. When we are able to make a song, get it done, mix and master with those same people, and then they know, because they're recording with you and they know the ideas behind what you want to do with the music and stuff like that. And then when you go to make the music video and you're making it with those same people, they know what the vision is for what you're trying to make.
Yeah.
So it's panned out pretty well. I haven't done a lot of film stuff in a long time. This is the most I've done recently because we were promoting the album, so I had to make snippets to boost the post on Instagram and Facebook and stuff like that. I relearned how to set up a green screen, which was a pain in the ass with that the clip that I did where I'm in the spaceship and talking about or showing the album on my transmission screen. And I was up until easily 5-6 a.m. just recording, fixing the green screen, trying to figure out YouTube tutorials and all that stuff. And that's what I went to school for, so you'd think it would just stick, but if you don't keep up on those skills, you easily forget them. But it's definitely they've meshed together hand in hand. It's definitely worked out. Even the song Streets of Havoc is that's based on the movie that Josh Bruce was doing.
Let's talk about that specific song. Tell us a little bit about Streets of Havoc and how does that relate to you as a musician? Or is that does that sort of help define who you are? Because I know some songs, they sort of are really, it's like a backstory of the artist itself, or how does that play out?
So Streets of Havoc was actually written about, again, what I was saying before about how the album kind of goes through my life. It's all basically KK's in his pod in orbit, the transmissions come in, he's seeing these transmissions from Earth, and the reason that KK is singing to them is basically that he's imagining himself in these positions in all these different transitions throughout the years. But also the transmissions are different points in my life, throughout the years. So Streets of Havoc was specifically 2016, 2017 when I was recording with, I was the makeup effects and special effects artist for Josh Bruce on a movie called Streets of Havoc.
Yeah.
And the song was written about basically the plot premise that we had for that film. We recently, I've been talking to him not that long ago about possibly going back in and filming the new scenes. The reason that it got pulled in the first place was because towards the end of filming, one of the SD cards got corrupted.
Yeah.
And 4 days of footage was just gone to the wind. So, like, the unfortunate aspect of that was that at that point, we had burned out all the actors who were also just volunteers, and they were like, we're done. Like, we don't want to do this anymore. So we talked about like possibly going back into it, and I said, you know, I want to make a track that would be like a really cool, because the movie is 80s, and so the song is very inherently 80s.
Yeah.
And the big thing that I noticed watching a lot of 80s films is that a lot of artists made songs specifically for the ending credits.
Yeah.
And they were always like bad at like freaking Danger Zone, Kenny Loggins, like for like Top Gun and stuff. Dokken made a song for Nightmare on Elm Street 3.
Yeah, Dream
like,
Warriors.
Yeah, Dream Warriors. Right, yeah. Dream Warriors was actually the reference track for Streets of Havoc. That was like what we went by. I actually looked up I looked up Dokken's guitar rig specifically to try and find like the amp sim sound for that. But yeah, so the song is really more about the two main characters. My guy being I also became the lead antagonist as time went on with like the story and stuff.
Yeah. Makes sense.
By the end of filming, I was everything from like I started out as the makeup and special effects artist, and then became an actor, and then became executive producer. I had so much money invested into that film, and for it to just end on like that's why I want to go back and finish it. I'm like, at least let me get my money's worth, you know, like, even if it doesn't go anywhere, at least say we tried, you know. Because now what we're looking at is that we had already shot all of the flashback scenes, and now that it's 6 years later, I was saying, why don't we just keep the flashback scenes and then film all the modern day scenes, and it'll actually be back and forth. Like, it'll actually be a 6-year gap.
Yeah.
And, like, you can see the difference in all the characters and, like, how they changed and stuff. I thought that would be, like, a really cool... It's like that movie... something like a boy or something, or Boy's Life or something like that, where they like filmed over like several years.
Yeah, I think I know which movie you're talking about.
And it was just like his progression of his life. I was like, that's freaking, you know, that's something that gets like noticed. Like somebody would look at that and be like, that's freaking cool.
They say like different songs have like different meanings to the artist. So from your new project, what song do you think like has the most meaning or like means the most to you? You know, the one that you've recently come up with.
It's probably a split between A New Era, just because of the connection to my grandmother, and Songs of Serenity being about my struggle with alcohol.
Tell us a little bit about that. Let's talk about some struggles of a musician. So what is it like dealing with alcohol and like being a musician, being on stage? How does it affect you, or how does it like go down a deep dark hole, or is there like some days better than others, or how have you like gotten a little bit better from that?
It's definitely very easy when you start getting into the mentality that you are a rock star, that you fall down the rabbit hole and you kind of just go into this realm of, I can party it up, I can live, just every rocker's dream, like everything that you've ever seen in the films or, any movies about rockers or something. And it doesn't matter how small scale you are. And I mean, like, Carnies of Chaos, when I was gigging, was not like a big
Although you did have some good, like, when your audience was watching you live, and we've been to your concerts in the past, obviously,
right.
And so you guys would play, and the audience would be pretty riled up. Some would be moshing. I was one of them, just trying to hit people, right? And you can get there's an adrenaline rush when it comes to that thing, and when you're in the show, when you're in the moment, things get a little rough, and afterwards, sometimes the adrenaline is keeping on going. So once the show is over, the show is not really over,
right?
Is it?
Exactly, and that was one of the things too that I think there was. It was one of the best and worst things for the show itself was that when we went up there, we played a character and we played the part well. And my character as KK Reaper for the Carnies of Chaos was specifically this ringleader who was all about drugs, sex, and rock and roll.
Not wrong with that.
He like encouraged like the fellow freaks, as we called them, like to be part of that momentum.
And the audience liked it pretty well too.
Oh yeah. And I mean, like, that's, for what it was worth, like, even though we didn't have a tremendous following, like, at shows and stuff, for the people that did show up, like, you get like good 30-40 people per show, and when they start moshing,
they're in it.
They would just like, and I mean, that's what made the shows seem so much larger than life. It wasn't the fact of like the quantity of people; it was like the quality of them, because they would just go fucking nuts.
Yeah, because they're not just like standing there like, ooh.
Right?
It's
Yeah,
better to have
like,
just,
they're not just like, and I think that one of the best things, and that's something that I also wanted to keep with the solo project, was the fact that we always had audience participation, and when you bring people into it, suddenly all inhibition about like being part of the mosh pit and being part of the show just goes right out the door. Like if me, and again, it's not to say like I'm this larger than life character, but like for that moment I am to that person, and if I come down the stairs from the stage and I'm like, get up here, they're just gonna do it, and then everyone else around them's gonna go fucking nuts.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what happened. I would bring up our friend Jason, Z. I would bring Z up to sing Last Caress by the Misfits. We used to cover that in the show. And the moment I would bring them up, the crowd would just lose it. And especially with the hanging baby, I would have like the baby on the noose, and the baby doll on the noose, and like stuff like, just like ridiculous, outrageous stuff. And people loved it. But when you get off that stage and you're still in that mindset and you're still in that character, and that was the thing that we agreed upon. We were like, even when you get off stage, you're still talking to the fans. And so as long as you're talking to the fans, you can't break that character. Like, you got to be that person.
It's like super method acting. Like,
right, exactly.
Yeah.
You
Exactly.
have to go Heath Ledger on those moments.
Except without the drugs and the training.
Yeah, right.
Maybe a little bit more.
Oh my, yeah, right.
We don't do that here.
We don't do that. But yeah, like it was easy for me because KK Reaper was just an extension of me that was a lot more extreme.
Yeah.
But when you were already extreme on stage and you get off the stage and then people are buying you rounds of beer and shots and this, that, and the other, and I'm just like, I'm loving, like that.
Yeah,
that
I
to
gotta
me
start a
is
band.
Like, yeah, right. Drinks for free all the time, and it was even like the Saint used to be really good about that. Anytime we went there, they would just give us our drinks for free, regardless, just because we were playing. And I, when you are in that, and people are doing all these nice things for you and you're talking and stuff, you don't realize, like, you're slamming these things back like it's water.
Because you're just so in the moment. You're not even.
Yeah,
you're not
right.
thinking about no consequence. You're not thinking about the morning after. You're thinking about right now, right here. Let's
I still
go.
have a piece, and it's funny now that I think about it, because Brighton Bar, I think, it might close down. They're still talking about it, but they said that it might not survive. But now I have a memoir from there, because I accidentally, while I was just completely wasted after a show there, I was out in the back, like on the back porch, and they have like a fence, but it's like rotted wood and stuff. And Rory was sitting down, and I was just like I was giving him like a lap dance. I had like my shirt tucked inside out and stuff. And I went to go lean on the fence, and I just went boof. My hand went right through their fence. I ended up taking like a piece of that wood home with me, and they were like, just go, like, don't let them see. But like it's a great time until you get home, and then you're looking at yourself and you're like, I don't even know who I am anymore.
Yeah.
Like
I had that feeling.
There were days that, especially towards the end, I actually had a mental breakdown at the last September show, right before the October shows, right before we split. I remember the night before we had like a really bad practice, like shit just hit the fan, and I left. Like, pretty much cried the whole night. Like, I was so upset with like just how everything was going. And then the next morning I woke up and I still just felt like absolute shit. And got in the shower, put on my ringleader coat and uniform, getting ready for the show before Aiden came to pick me up. And I remember just like in the shower and then getting out and putting the outfit on, I was like, why am I doing this? Why am I here? Is any of this even real? Like, is this just a simulation?
Sounds like me at work, honestly.
Yeah, because you do kind of go on autopilot, but especially if you're in that bad way. And I mean, I was smoking, drinking, smoking pot, all I was eating was fast food, because that was all that was open at freaking 2:00 in the morning when you'd leave the bar after a show or whatever. Not eating during the day. My breakfast was a freaking Black and Mild and a coffee.
Oh my god!
Wow.
Yeah,
Coffee
and
nicotine.
then I'd go to a show, and then I would drink, and I'd wonder why I was getting so drunk so fast, and I was like, I don't have any freaking food in my stomach.
Yeah.
But yeah, I remember like I broke down in tears, and I was like unconsolable for like an hour and a half, and Aiden's here at my house trying to pick up like all the props and stuff, and he keeps looking out in the backyard. My parents are like surrounding me, and he's like, "Is he okay?" And he, like I just looked at him, I was like, no. But you know, it was everything crashing down at once. It was the band drama, you know, my own personal life drama, and just everything that I was doing to myself just put me in such a bad feedback loop. And I was like, I could just, you know, I could kill myself and it just wouldn't matter. Like everything is just a null factor at that point, because I was torturing myself so much. I was like, death is the only possible better thing than what's going on right now. And I really, like, I genuinely just did not know how to get outside of that. So that was, you know, that was at the point that I was like, you know, if I want this to not happen, if I don't want to feel like this, I really do have to make a change. And that's kind of where, that's where Songs of Serenity comes from. Like that song is all about how I felt between the point that I was at my worst, which was when I blacked out at the Saint after a show because our buddies in not that it was his fault, he didn't know, but I didn't have anything to eat that day. We went to the show, we played the show. Our buddy's an Elephant Killer, my buddy Enrique, brought in his own bottle of Bacardi, and I was drinking Captain and Cokes. And then when I wasn't looking, he'd pour the Bacardi in my Captain and Coke.
Oh,
Great.
God.
So it was like easily 1/2 Bacardi, 1/4 Captain, and then like 1/4 Coke, and that was it.
Perfect.
And we were doing shots and stuff too. At the end of the night, I was blacked out. I was buying rounds of shots for people with money I didn't have, with people I didn't know, and I was completely incoherent. And finally, Aiden, with, you know, because he was the sensible one, came up behind me, looked at the bartender, was like stop. And so the bartender cut me off, and Aiden dragged me out of the bar, put me in the passenger seat of his car.
Good man.
Started driving me home, and then he rolled down the window. I don't even remember this happening, but apparently I threw up all over the side of his car. And it was like black, because all that was in my stomach was fucking Captain and Coke.
Yeah.
So I threw up. He got me back to my house. I like fell out of the car, and he was like unloading the props while I was trying to figure out how motion works and how to get myself out of the ground. And then the cops came. And so now all they see is these two guys in face paint and fake blood, and one of them is laying on the ground against the freaking telephone pole at like 2:00 in the morning, and they're like, what in the fuck is this? Like, one of them actually like had their hand on their holster, like, I don't trust this for shit. And the officer came over, shined their light. That was the moment that I actually started coming to, and I looked and I was like, that's very bright. It's like, can you not? And she was like, where do you live? I was like, right there. And they brought me in, and I don't know if you guys saw, but on my Spotify, the album art for Songs of Serenity as the single is a picture of me laying like face down, and it's a picture that Aiden had taken after he got me in the house. I ran out to the backyard, and I think in my head all I could think of was like, if I jump in the pool right now, that'll be it. I'll go out smoothly. I'm too drunk to feel it. I'll just drown in the bottom, and that'll be it. And so the picture was me, I guess, trying to make that effort to go to the pool, and then just face planted.
Face planted right on the ground.
Right on the ground, yeah. I mean, Aiden was there, so he would have never let anything bad happen to me, thank God. You know, Aiden's a freaking godsend. But, you know, that was my lowest point, and that picture is like a perfect representation of that, and that's why I wanted to use that for the single cover. And I surrounded it by, like, on the borders, it's surrounded by stars and stuff, because that's what it felt like. I felt like I was just in orbit, you know, like in space. My brain was just gone.
A lot of people, when they go to concerts, they see the musician on stage, rocking his brains out, right? They see all this fanatics and all this crazy spectacle, but what they don't see is what happens behind the scenes, behind closed doors. What happens? What happens at the after party? Who makes it? Who doesn't make it? Who throws up? Who doesn't?
The after party is where the fun still commences. It's when the party is completely done, when everyone's gone and you're there by yourself, and you realize that all of those people Like, I mean, obviously you do have some people that really do care, but like the people that, again, they knew me as KK Reaper, they didn't know me as myself.
Yeah.
And so when everyone left and I was there left to my own, vices, I was just like, wow, this like, suddenly like that high comes down and you're like, this is pretty shit. Like I feel shitty. Like
Yeah, it goes from a really high to a super low.
Right.
Low.
Tell us a crazy after party story.
Oh God. Jeez. Like after a show or like just parties in general?
After a show.
After a show. It's really bad, but it's so hard to remember because I was just always so wasted.
What do you remember?
I'm trying to think. Like, I mean, like, the best ones were like I said, like when I put a hole through freaking Brighton Bar's fence just out of my mind. The Saint show. I mean, the Saint show was going really well. There's pictures up on Facebook of me and Enrique, who I'm pretty sure is like, I don't know how much older than he's not that much older than me, but like fairly enough. Like we were like kissing on camera and stuff like that. I stole his Komodo. He had like a Komodo on stage. I stole his Komodo.
Yeah.
There's pictures of him like leaning on my ass, like just like with my ass out and stuff. Yeah, I mean most of the stuff, after shows, depending on like when it was and where, like what a good one. We did New Year's Eve. We did Brighton Bar, and afterwards my buddy Frank had a party, so I ran to that, and that was a lot of fun because I was still like dressed in the costume and stuff, so like it was all people that I still knew, but they knew that I just came from a show, and it made me feel like real, like like real deal. Like they were like, oh my god, KK and all that, and I was like, that's pretty cool. Like I got wasted for New Year's Eve with all my buddies. There's a video somebody took on Snapchat of me after a couple of drinks that night, where everyone in my friend group knows I'm gay. So when when we walked in, like everyone was cheering for literally anything. Like somebody walked in, everyone like somebody walked in and was like, I stubbed my toe, and everyone was just like, yeah, like just like at the top of their lungs screaming for no reason.
Sounds like me after 3 shots, honestly.
So, yeah, exactly. I mean, that's pretty much where everyone was at that point, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
But I was like talking to somebody outside, and they were like, they would just cheer for anything. And I was like, 1 second. I walk inside. I'm like, attention, everybody, like clanking my fucking like twisted tea or whatever I had in my hand. And I'm like, attention, everybody. I know this might be hard to believe given my toxic masculinity, but I am in fact a homosexual male, and everyone just lost their minds. Like people, like I got like a group hug from all angles.
Yeah, for the firemen.
Yeah, I was like that was the coming out that I wanted. That was the coming out.
That's how it should have been.
Yeah, right.
Right.
That was the coming out I didn't get the first time, so I got it the second time.
But with the music, what's your opinion on on the music industry today? What is something that you
kind of crap is going on?
What kind of crap?
Talk to us about your opinions on the music industry, because I know a lot of people got different opinions on it. It's kind of in a weird space.
It's definitely in a weird space, especially with COVID now. It kind of there's a lot of factors, especially in the last like 2 to 3 years, that have kind of changed the game and how it works. I can tell you for one thing that the streaming platforms are getting away with way too much as far as royalties are concerned. And that's been like an ongoing thing, and you'll hear both sides. People are like, oh, well, if you're not popular, then, but if you take into consideration that like even iTunes, like right off the bat, you had people selling physical copies, and you could sell them for like $10 a CD.
Yeah, $10.
Which was like the norm,
yeah,
and you had like, and at one point, like it's interesting to see the evolution. Like, right, you had vinyls and 8 tracks, which were literally just 8 tracks on there, like usually 8 or 9, like give or take. And then they were like, all right, well, we're not getting enough bang for our buck, so you're gonna have to start making more songs. And then you get like 10, 11, and then they were like, no, still not enough. So then you get 15, 16, and like that's pretty much where we've plateaued so far. But now they were like, all right, so we're gonna make CDs obsolete with iTunes. And iTunes, at least, then you had the option, like, you could just pick a song and buy the song instead of buying the album, which is fine, you know, because you're still making a profit off of the song itself.
Yeah.
And even iTunes went as far as to go from 99 cents to 109.
Into $1.29, right?
Is it $1.20? Yeah, I think it might be $1.29 now. But the reason they did that was because it's basically the song plus tax.
Yeah.
And so I still make $1 on every song that you buy off of iTunes. Then the streaming services came in and they were like, all right, we're going to put all your music out here for $10 a month, but we're only going to give you 10, like a penny for like 100 listens, you know? And I look at, like, I have the backdrop from CD Baby, and they show me like all the breakdown of like all the places make, you know, where the money is. And even if I was to get like 100 listens, which in retrospect is not a lot, but if those 100 listens were iTunes, I'd be making $100. Those 100 listens on Spotify makes me like 10 cents.
Yeah.
So, you know, it makes it very difficult for aspiring artists to work in the field because, and especially now with COVID, it shut down all the venues. Yeah. So, you know, the main promotional aspect of it was that you would go out and you'd play shows and you'd promote the album that was coming up.
Yeah, because like that's where because like doing shows is like where you make the most money. Because and especially for people who have labels, because a lot of the times when bands or whatever are on a label, they don't really see a lot of that money from like the actual music they make. They usually get a lot of that money from like the shows and from the merch sales of that show and all that other stuff.
Well, that's the whole thing. You know, when it comes to being signed to a label at that level, it doesn't really, not that it doesn't matter, but like those companies are not complaining about Spotify and iTunes and all that, because
they'll still make the money.
They have enough in their revenue to promote your product for you. And that's basically the trade-off, is that they make pretty much most of the money off of your record sales because they're also promoting it and they need to make that money back plus interest.
Yeah, exactly.
So in that regard, it's a little bit more understandable, and they kind of just roll with the punches and deal with it. For the independent artist that's doing it themselves and they put all this money into production to make it sound as like legit as possible, and in advertising, I mean, I can tell you as an independent artist myself, the album itself cost about $1,000 to make, which granted is cheap, but that's because I was working with friends that were fresh out of college, and because of COVID they gave me discount and all that stuff. You know, generally speaking, it's not that cheap to make these things.
No.
And you know, between that and ad revenue for Facebook and Instagram and all that stuff, and you know, now you can't be a musical artist without also being like a TikTok star. That's like a big combination of the two.
Let us just clarify right now. TikTok is Corona.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
Well, you know what I wanted to say is that Mike and I say this all the time on different podcasts and videos, is that there's an old order of way of doing things, and then there's a new order way of doing things. So back in the day, things are very different in the music industry because technology has not been advanced as it is now.
Yeah.
Compared to today, we have all these streaming services, and we're in a new order. You've got a
computer in your pocket, like you can get anything.
Yeah, we have new statistics on everything. We have new data. We have new analysis on everything, and the old way of doing things is starting to become obsolete. So a lot of musicians from back in the day have to adapt to this new way of doing things because the rise of technology has made everything change. In the past years, especially, as you mentioned with Spotify. So I think it's very important to point out that the music industry is constantly changing with the rise of technology, and people are doing things different. Combine that with the fact that a lot of people are not going out as much as they used to because of COVID, right? And then you have the fact that, well, you know, I don't really feel like going to a concert today. But I could just buy, you know, I can listen to it on Spotify for $10 a month, and that's taking away money from the musicians themselves. Yeah. It's all because of this new way of doing things. Combine that with the fact of COVID, and you have this whole situation that a lot of musicians are trying to squiggle their way out of.
Well, that's the hardest thing. I think there's a silver lining to the fact that, like, now that the vaccine's rolling out and COVID's starting to slowly, you know, digress, and the venues are starting to be able to open back up, everyone's like hounding for a show. So literally, like, you know, you can go down the block and, you know, wherever you are and find like a local venue just to get out, just to go to a show. And I think that that's the silver lining, because then you're going to open the door to a lot of indie bands that are now starting to go back out and play these things.
Yeah.
And it is coming. A big boom is coming.
Right.
So
Yeah.
I can assure you of that.
Yeah, I've never
I'm-
bought
I'm-
tickets so fast in my life before.
I'm already
Like,
seeing it.
Right, yeah, the Mudvayne.
Mudvayne
Yeah.
reunion.
Right.
I bought those tickets so fast.
The
Yeah.
past year has given people
That's
this
also
craving.
it's really interesting how COVID has reunited a lot of people. Like, you know, that there was a lot of things in the works, and now finally it's coming to fruition because COVID is starting to die down a little bit.
Yeah.
And,
I think it made people appreciate little things a little bit more. You know, appreciate
Yeah.
in-person interaction. Appreciate
you only,
good
as
times,
far as
good
we know,
people.
we only get this one life, and you only get 80 years, give or take. So like, live
Exactly.
it up, you know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Do what we can.
But yeah, you know, it's definitely difficult. It's a hurdle. It's a lot of it's a very big learning curve for a lot of artists. You know, like I said, with the TikTok and all that stuff, like how to promote yourself properly. I like to think that I'm starting to acclimate to what is going on, and I think that like the ad that I ran with me in the spaceship seems to be promoting like pretty well. So there you know, you start to get used to it, and you find the answer to like the new world, like you said. You know, like we're
It's a new order of
phasing out.
things, yeah.
The interesting thing too is that you know, CDs have become obsolete pretty much at this point.
Which sucks because
The trunk of my car does not agree.
Yeah,
Yeah, right.
I would buy every physical copy CD if I could.
Yeah, I mean,
One day
and
that
that's-
might be worth a lot.
You know, I think that our generation still appreciates it to some degree, but I mean, like you look at most cars today, they don't have a CD player anymore. Like that, it's just not a thing really. Most of it is just you plug your phone right into the car and stuff, and that was the main source towards the end that was keeping CDs alive. And if you remove that, there's literally no reason to have one.
Yeah, like even computers, a lot of computers are getting rid of CD drives too.
Right, exactly.
And,
Yeah.
and I literally have to have a portable CD drive, like a external CD drive, just to put
Yep.
CDs onto my.
I got
onto
my Mac
computer.
and I was like $3,000 to not have a fucking
yeah.
like right,
Yeah.
like you know, I got it for Logic Pro X, but it would have been nice to be able to like burn a copy of something instead of fucking
Yeah.
Yeah,
you know.
exactly.
But
Yeah, just like the same thing with all these streaming services. A new way of doing things is developing, and the old way of doing things is going away. CDs, video cassette tapes, VHS. I miss that.
yeah, VHS
Yo,
is
I
nice.
still have a good amount of VHS. But like I feel like in this music industry, if you know what you're doing, like if you got the mindset, you got this real good mindset, especially
You gotta have
being
your
an
nose to the grind like 110%.
and you're an independent artist. I think if you play the game right and you have a super on point mindset about, you know, the music industry and you know what you're doing, I feel like you can make a lot more that way than you could possibly in labels, especially depending
Oh, yeah.
upon the label.
Right.
I feel like if you're super on point and you know what you're doing, you know what you want, and you know you're gonna succeed, and you know, and you make your, you know, your aspirations like come out, and you make all that shit like just come out and just put it on the table. People will eat that shit up.
Yeah.
People will, you know, I feel like you can just make so much that way, especially if you get a good following, get people to really support, and you can get like for some reason I can't remember this artist. He just went viral recently. He's independent. I think his name is Tom something. He bought a beat from Eminem for $100,000.
Wow.
And he made a song like with that beat, and he's independent. He got like millions of viewers watching that song and streaming the song. So he must have made a lot of money from that, depending upon how that works. And he's completely independent.
Yeah,
This guy's
yeah.
independent. So he, you know, and you know, just getting in there, just buying. Because I mean, like Eminem making beats in itself. If you wanted to buy a beat from Eminem, it'd probably be like, you know, $500,000,
Yeah.
Unless he likes
$750
you.
million
Yeah.
dollars.
Yeah.
Like, you know, because he's like one of the biggest artists out there right
Yeah.
now. You know, and you know, buying it for that cheap, making a song and then making it go viral
Right.
can really help you, especially as an independent artist.
Well, that's
and if he's got the mindset for it, he could do anything.
the interesting thing too about what's happening now is that the way of the album is slowly also being phased out, and it's
Yeah.
become a very like singles game. Like you really have to release like a hit single, and if you want to keep
every
doing
6 months.
yeah, right. Like if you want to keep that momentum going, you have to be able to continually do that.
Yeah, because falling in reverse, they put out those 3 songs, like last year or the year before or whatever, like during, I think it was like just before COVID and into COVID,
Yeah.
and like they're like, and I think that they're probably like their best songs that they've ever done, honestly. And I'm like, where is this album? Like, I want to know where this album is. I wanna pick it up.
I want to be able to get the right.
And it's just they're all just singles.
Yeah.
I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, I want an album.
I know.
Like, I want a physical copy CD to put into my computer, to have on my iTunes, to play on my really big iPod Classic.
Right. No, definitely. I think about that too in the regards of, you know, a lot of the influence for my writing as far as like the storyline goes is like, you know, you look at like Pink Floyd's The Wall, and like it's got great songs on its own, but like if you listen to the whole album, I mean, it's a great fucking album. Like, and so the fact that is getting phased out is a little disheartening because it's like you know,
the concept album.
Yeah, like I mean, even just the fact that like because every album has a concept.
Yeah.
You know, like you don't just go in and just like throw I mean, except for me, I guess, in this particular album, but you know, like even that had the idea with like the fact that they're transmissions, even though they're
I feel like yours is like your album is kind of like a concept album in itself.
Right.
Because of the storyline of going from the first song to, you know, for the first track to last track, I feel like you're just going on a complete journey, and it's like
right.
Yeah. I really love like concept albums that, you know, that just flow. That's why I love Pink Floyd. Yeah. The debut album of Mudvayne is a concept album. It's so awesome how it just flows into each song and all those things.
Yeah.
And like I hate to hear that, like, you know, albums like that and stuff, even just albums in general, just pretty much getting phased in itself. Yeah. And just knowing that, like, the concept albums, like, those kinds of concept albums, like, yeah, every album has a concept, but, like, you know, those specific types of albums in itself, like, the creativity for it, like, is just slowly going away because people just want to make the songs to you know, get their return on that.
Right, exactly, yeah. I mean, it's, you know, it's understandable in this market, in the way that the market is set up, that, you know, the reason that they're doing it is that they're just, again, like, going with the times. Like, they're going with what will make back the money that they spent on making that one track instead of making a whole album and have it fall flat.
And they have to adapt the technology that they have now since everything is constantly changing.
But you know, the one thing, again, this is like part of the marketability thing that I've been looking at as far as my album is concerned, and why I think that there's like a little bit of an idea growing as far as like how to market it. For the CD version of the album, there's 4 bonus tracks that are not available digitally. So, you know, things like that would entice and like the fact that it's got the booklet with like art in it, and it's got the lyrics and all that stuff.
This is why I love CDs.
Right.
All this stuff. That's why I love CDs.
I thought it was interesting. I talked to a couple of friends of mine about, you know, because the reason I was doing pre-sales was because I wanted to see what the reception of physical copies would be before I printed them and then just had them sitting in my house for the rest of the time, you know? So I was doing pre-orders, just getting an idea, getting their information down, and I said, you don't have to pay until I produce them. And then once I get the production in, if I have enough money to do it with the amount of people that ordered, I'll collect all the money at once, put it into production, and we'll do it that way. But as I was talking to a couple of friends of mine about the physical copies, I talked about making vinyl and doing a dual vinyl where like the first one was going to be like a galaxy with like red and black swirls, and then the other one was going to look like stars with like white shooting out from the black background. And he said, yeah, you know, like a lot of people buy that now just for the art purpose of it. Like they don't even have a record player, they'll just buy it because they like the way it looks and the packaging and all that. And I was like, I didn't even really think about that, but like at this point in the game, you know, vinyl made a resurgence recently.
Like in the last few years.
Yeah. And same thing with cassette to a lesser degree, but they were starting to come back, like just those analog, you know. It makes me think too in the future that people are going to look at CDs and be like, oh, this is so vintage, man. Like this is so cool, you know, like real hip and all that. And, you know, it's just as things evolve, it just goes in a circle. You just come back around to those formats. But, yeah, you know, that if you want to market yourself in a way that you want to sell the album and not just a single, I think that the best way to do that is to offer more for what you're selling in the physical copy than what you're giving to them in the digital copy. Because you're basically, I mean, that's what it is. You're just giving them that product at that point.
Yeah.
And when you put it digitally, you're just basically like, here you go. Yeah, like give me 10 cents. Like So
how do you think actually music has influenced like culture as of recently? Has there been like a shift, you think, or has anything big changed lately?
I like to think that there is some music that still holds true to being like a culture changer. I don't think that there's a lot to go off of on that now. Like, the last time that I remember there being like a cultural shift, and maybe it's just the fact that we're getting older, you know, like maybe it's just that point where we're looking at it and being like, this is garbage, this is shit, and then like the Gen Zs are looking at us like, you're just, all right, millennial, like, like we're okay, becoming boomer. Our parents, yeah.
Okay, boomer.
Right, exactly. But there are some, like Billie Eilish is one person that I have a lot of respect for, because I do think that she took like a minimalist approach to her music, even though there's a ton of production that goes into that, and I think that a lot of people don't give her the appreciation for that. Like, a lot of people look at her and just, oh, it's another pop artist, oh, she's trying to like outdo Lady Gaga or something like that, like in the shock value and stuff. But if you listen, like she's got layers and layers of her voice in that song. Like, it's a big production value to what she puts out, and it's music. Like, I can listen to it and not be like, please, like, please turn this on. Like, I listened to some of the stuff that wasn't radio played. I listened to some of her B-sides, and it's very emotionally driven. It's very like almost cinematic in a way. It's got like a very nice appeal to it. I think that she kind of pushed to try and bring at least some culture to the music scene back. And now they kind of took her image away a little bit. I don't know if you saw any, like, the recent, like, I forget what the magazine was, but she did a photo shoot for the magazine.
Like,
she was
just, like, blonde or something?
Yeah, she's blonde with, like, and I mean, like, to each their, if she's doing it because of her, that's one thing. But if the label is like, we got to move away from the creepy stuff because it's not selling as well, that kind of sucks.
Yeah, that's terrible.
But yeah, I think the last cultural shift with music was probably like the 2010s. Because we had like Lady Gaga, Kesha, Adam Lambert. There was like this surge of, I don't know what you would call it. It's like fun pop, like house party pop, And it was weird and creative, and like even though it was auto-tuney and stuff like that, like in it's not like super well.
It's kind of like very small verse, like chorus that they do like 6 times with a like party beat right after.
Forget it now. The freaking songs now are like 1:50. I'm like, Jesus Christ.
Oh yeah, I know.
Has the attention span gotten that short?
Yes,
like,
actually. We live in the too long didn't read generation.
Right.
So we live in a generation where people want everything fast. They want it now. They want it quick.
Right.
And if you can't give it to them, like you could look at the click time between like on Google and stuff. If a page won't load within like 2 seconds, forget it.
Yeah,
or they'll double tap the the app and they'll just swipe up.
I can't even say that. Like I'm guilty of that too. Like it's just a matter of it's our environment. If you're accustomed to a certain way, and you get used to that speed and this rapid fire, like everything.
4G LTE everywhere. Like,
right,
5G, 6G, 7G.
Right.
So we want the quick hit. We want it now. We want the quick hit. We want it now. We want like to be constantly enthralled. We want our brain to be constantly moving, and because that's not really the way we've evolved. Like, we're constantly looking for something, even though it might not even be there to begin with.
Right.
And that's some philosophy for you.
Right. But, I mean, it's definitely there. Again, certain people in the industry have worked with those means, with what today is, and they made it work. Little Nas X with Montiero recently.
Oh, my God.
I loved that because I actually really like the song. I mean, again, auto-tune and all that, like, what are you not? I've learned that auto-tune is a custom in all music production.
Well, yeah.
Like even if it's just
the amount
slight.
that is used.
Yeah, right, exactly. You can oversaturate it, or
because no one's voice is perfect.
Right.
So like that, they use
except Freddie Mercury.
Well, and even him, I'm sure they had something, and I mean he had the layered voices too because he had the backup vocals and all that.
Yeah, but, like they use it on everybody to just make it work with the song, to make it flow better, to make it sound right. Because sometimes you could belt out something and maybe run part of it is just a little fucked up. You gotta fix it right there. Something like that.
Exactly.
Like everybody uses it. It's just the amount that people use.
You can oversaturate it for the purpose of making it sound robotic, and some people do that as an
style,
artistic.
right. Yeah, like Avenged Sevenfold did that. on their self-titled album, they had like a song where like most of their vocals was just autotune.
Right.
They just did it on one song.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the whole thing is like I don't judge, like even as like a rock and metal guy, like I can listen to, I love Lady Gaga, like she's one of my favorites. I think she's super talented, and that was one of those people that like came out in the industry in the 2010s that I was like, she's not just pumping out songs for the sake. In the beginning, she kind of was, because the record label was like, we want you to be another sexy pop artist and just sing these songs about, bluffing with my muffin, freaking poker face, and like all that stuff, love game, take a ride on your disco stick and all that. And they just wanted her to be a sex icon, but she actually took the reins, said,
no, dog.
Like basically, yeah, like she was like kind of fuck you, but not really. But she, they said, we want you in these sexy outfits, and she was like, okay, I'm gonna make it weird. And so that's why she would wear those. She was like, I'm going to do what they asked me to, but on my terms.
Yeah.
And once she became big enough, once she like made all these hits and made all this money, she left the record label and was like, I'm gonna start making my own shit and make it on my own with my own shit now. And that's exactly what she did. The album Joanne is completely diverged from all the like traditional pop stuff that she made in the like previous albums, and it's purely like her skill on the piano, her voice. Like she's an amazing artist. And I think the same thing, even though they're not necessarily like I don't want to say not talented, but like they don't have that same exuberance as Lady Gaga. Like they do it in different ways. They have different talents in different aspects of how they're producing music, and they're keeping up with the times while still being themselves. Yeah. I think the fact that both musically and artistically, the fact that Lil Nas X was able to piss off like everyone by giving a lap dance to Satan in
honestly,
in 2021,
hilarious.
no less. Like when everyone, like even Alice Cooper himself was said like shock is dead because nobody's shocked by anything anymore, and Lil Nas did it in 2021. I was like, props, man! Like the fact that you can do that and and still shock people and make people like angry or whatever. That's my livelihood, and I'm glad to see that it's still alive and well, that people still get pissed off.
What's that? We live in a new time, in a new age, and with the new age, you need to develop new techniques, because the old techniques are not going to work anymore. So now you need to find a way to adapt to this new society that we're creating, and you need to create shock, awing factors that correlate with how we live today. Mm-hmm. So things that may not be shocking back then would now be shocking now, and vice versa. Today's things that might not be shocking,
Well, anything from today is definitely shocking back then.
Well, we also live in more of an emotional generation that Mike and I talk about. So when you do something that can trigger someone's emotions and get a crowd hyped, that you can create that shock value. Yeah. And with that, then they'll remember you.
Yeah, definitely.
If you can get an audience to have an emotional spike, they're going to leave that concert like, that was the greatest concert I've ever been to, because they felt some kind of emotional high that they were not getting with other bands. So if you could find a way to sort of spike, get someone, like with the hanging of the baby, right? In your concert.
Exactly.
Okay, that's a shock.
Getting your head cut off in
that.
On that show.
You putting out that act.
I will say that there is a fine line, and I like that was one of the things that I've talked to like my bandmates about. I've talked to people that I've worked with about, because they know that like what I'm going for is like the shock rock value.
Yeah.
I want the songs to be good on their own, but at the same time, like
you want a spike. You want an extra little push.
Right, exactly. And that's why, like, so for example, Political Bukkake, like making that song, I went in with the idea of, there was left versus right for so long, and it especially came to a head in like the recent years, just because of all the events that have gone on. And I was like, basically in writing that song, I was like, both sides, no matter how much you love their candidates, are still millionaires who don't give a shit about you.
Yeah, they still fucking suck.
Right. In the back room, they're all still partying with each other like nothing ever happened out on the stage.
Yeah, exactly.
And so that was what that song was about. But to show true bipartisanship, I put the Trump samples in and, made fun of him a little bit and stuff. And I, like the Bill Clinton one at the beginning. I did not have sexual relations with that woman. But I also released it. I released the single version of it on Biden's inauguration. So, good. Things like that. I do think that there's a threshold where you can be shocking to an extent of getting your point across without being overtly offensive, without being, like there's people that try to go out and like, I remember somebody had a song about giving people AIDS. And I was
it happens.
Yeah, but like it was like proud of giving people AIDS, and I was like, all right, this is just like so on the nose, you know. Like I get what you're trying to do, I get that it's shocking and all that, but like there's shocking for the sake of being shocking, and then there's shocking for the sake of art. I think at the very least, you know, like I think that what Alice Cooper does with his presence and his show is shock art. Yeah. You know, like people go in, I mean, especially back in the 60s and 70s when he was just coming out, and it's this guy dressed in women's clothing and makeup, and he's getting his head cut off, and he's in the electric chair, and he's got the snake wrapped around. People looked at him like he was like a devil worshiper.
Yeah.
And like without even saying anything about the devil or anything, people already had that image in their head, and they were
but
like,
it works,
yeah.
It still works.
Right, exactly. And I think like, you know, even with, I think that now you do have to be a little bit more on the, you know, like the Lil Nas X thing obviously was like, you know, he cracks Satan's neck and he sits down in the throne and puts the horns on. Like that's very spot on, you know.
Yeah,
but at the same token, it's not like it's not endorsing anything. It's not saying anything negative or positive about Satanism or Catholicism or anything. You know, like any sort of religion. It is simply shock art. Yeah. It is simply, you know, you interpret that for what it is. You interpret how you want to feel about it.
Yeah, let the audience interpret.
Yeah, and that's what's great about that's what's great about music. It's all subjective. You take it as you see it, and you know, an artist will have a way that they look at it, but a listener might have a completely different way of looking at it.
That's why I like this. That's why I like the songs where the artist comes up with lyrics in their song that people spend decades trying to figure out, like, what did he mean by this?
Yeah.
And that creates a lot of good conversation. Also, once again, another emotional pull from the song, and it makes you want to listen to it more, and that can gain more sales and get more notoriety.
Absolutely.
Because, you know,
all the people that reverse the vinyl to figure out the subliminal messages in the back.
Well, sometimes the best songs are the ones that are not very clear with its message, right? You want to create sort of a distinction for certain people to make their own interpretation of the song. Yeah. That way, it'll make it more memorable, and it's also could be good word of mouth. Like, hey, check out the song. You might be very interested. I want to hear your thoughts about this, right? It's like reading a good book. Sometimes you want to hear different interpretations of it, what it might mean. Maybe listen to it again and again. Maybe listen to it on a car ride to a vacation in Atlantic City somewhere, gambling.
The book is a perfect example of, like, you know, if you read a book and you're imagining the scenario in your head, that's why most people say, like, the book is better than the movie, because you have it envisioned your way.
Well, that's why it's also good when you use songs for certain movies, right, in certain situations, because it really helps the tone of the situation in whatever story you're trying to predict. And you, working in film like you have before, you'd know that if you use a good song and a good scenario, you could really get that memorable.
Oh yeah,
you know,
that's one of my favorite. With specifically, you know, because obviously I'm a big horror guy. A lot of horror films that will take a completely normal song, like just totally like upbeat, whatever it could be, like Happy, you know, freaking Pharrell Williams, and they'll put it to like a death scene. And that's all that people can, like, once they see that movie, that's all they can think about when they hear that song.
And it works,
after
exactly.
That.
I think it's
like Tiptoe Through the Tulips with Insidious.
Yeah, exactly. I was thinking of that too. Like that song had no relevance to me until I watched that movie, and I was like, anytime I hear that now, all I can think is the demon's nail on the freaking vinyl. I was like, that's creepy. Like, you know,
or the boy dancing?
Yeah, right.
Oh, yeah.
If I ever heard that walking into my house, I'd be like, fuck no. Like,
oh hell no.
If you had to give like advice to like musicians that are trying to rise up and get their stuff heard, what would your advice be to them?
Pretty much. I mean, pretty much what we covered tonight. You know, like the nose to the grind, 110%. You know, COVID was. I know that it's hard for a lot of people during COVID to be artistically creative. You know, it was definitely not like, don't feel bad if you didn't put anything out during that time, because it was a stressful time. We're living currently in stressful times just around the world. Never feel like you have to put something out right away, but if you really want to make it, you got to dedicate yourself to, even if you're not doing something. Like if you're making a song and you don't do it that particular day, like if you don't continue working on that song that particular day, work on something else, promote your stuff, find a way to make new merch, like anything you can do within your means, even if it's not working on that one particular thing a day, because you'll burn yourself out. I mean, if you continue working on one thing over the course of day by day, 24/7, eventually you'll just hate it.
Yeah.
You know, you'll listen to it and you'll be like this is just fucking garbage, and then you'll throw it out, even though it might actually be a good, you know,
really good, yeah.
You just need to take a step back, walk away, come back to it later.
Yeah, let's say a guy's coming up to you, says, hey, KK Reaper, I'm trying to make this music, I'm trying to get this band going, but things are not going well, and no one's really listening, and I'm having a lot of trouble getting everything together, and I feel like giving up. What would you say to him?
Well, for one, don't give up. I wholeheartedly believe that you can only get better, but don't be pompous about it either. Don't just think that you're gonna go in there, make whatever you want, and then it's gonna take off. Like, if it's not taking off, there's probably a reason it's not taking off, and you need to go back in and fix whatever that issue is. And you need to be able to take those second, third, fourth, fifth opinions from people around you, even if they're not musicians, even if they're just. I played these songs for general audiences as a test run to see what sticks, what doesn't, what works, you know, and you want to be able to take that criticism. 9 times out of 10, nobody's going to come up to you and just be like, that fucking sucks, and I'm not going to tell you why. People are going to tell you if it sucks or not, and then they're going to explain their reasoning. If they don't, they're an asshole.
Yeah, that's
true. But yeah, I mean, you know, don't give up. With everything that's happened, you know, currently with my stuff, you know, it took 1.5 years because of COVID, but we also worked over COVID. And during that time, like when we couldn't meet up, I was still making KK Reaper merch. I was boosting posts on Instagram and Facebook for whatever it was, even if I was just releasing a single. You know, like you want to believe that whatever you're putting out, even if it's a single, even if it's a minute 50 song, even if it's an interlude, whatever it is, you want to believe that is like your top tier, and you got to know that it's your top tier. You got to know that what you're putting out there is like the best of your abilities right now.
Yeah, you have to like manifest it. Like if you believe that it is, you can manifest that it will be great.
Right.
And people will also think it would be great as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. By just it's all about that mindset. It's all
That's
about
what, you know,
having that mentality to be the best that you can be.
Mm-hmm.
And once you have that and you're going through it, like you can manifest greatness from that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's, you know, one of the things that I never really liked. You know, I like to keep things modest. I like when people are modest about their work. But I have noticed as I look through TikTok and things like that, I guess it's not necessarily always cockiness. Sometimes it kind of teeter-totters on, like, between confidence and cockiness.
Yeah.
But that is, like, I look at their followers and they've got, like, 1.7 million followers. I'm like, they're doing something right. You know,
Yeah,
like, the fact that they're hyping themselves up makes everyone else believe that they are just, like, hot shit.
Yeah.
And if you can do that, if you can ride that, that's great. But if you have product to back it up, that's 10 times better.
100%.
You know, if you have confidence and cockiness for good reason, you're set. And you know, you gotta promote, again, like, that is the best thing in the world, and people will look at it and be like, they'll form their own opinions, but they'll still look at it, and you still get the 10 cents from Spotify for them listening to it.
Now, yes, your new album is coming out pretty much in a month from now, as of recording this video. But what are your plans once it releases? I know you're probably gonna do some shows, but do you have any plans on doing any like actual music videos for any of the songs on the project? Do you have any plans on even recording a new album after this at some point in the future?
So there's a couple of layers to that. The Mistress of the Freaks music video is currently in the works, and we are trying to get that done so we can release it with the album on the same day.
Yeah.
And it's going well. So like I've gotten a lot of that's again where like the film stuff comes in handy. I've been filming a lot of the B-roll with Laura. I did like a lot of her shots because she's the one on the album cover.
Yeah.
So I wanted her in the video. I already started editing those shots together. It looks really nice. It's got like you know, the album cover, the single cover, I should say, was black and white. It looks very vintage. So for the music video, I wanted to give it that same vibe, and so I took like 1920s layovers, like you know, like the fuzzy frame, black and white film grain. I slowed it to 16 frames per second, so that way it looks like it's choppy. And the stuff that I shot with her looks so like cool. It's just got like a really cool vibe to it. One of my favorite shots that we did was she was holding a thing of roses in a cemetery, and I, from the top, like underneath, with the camera facing just her chest and the roses, poured fake blood all over it. And it just, like, with the black and white over it, you can't really tell for sure what it is, so it makes it all the more eerie. And the main thing right now is just getting the band together to film their shots, because that's scheduling and all that stuff is just difficult. Live shows, that's, again, like, kind of a catch-22 as far as what's open, what's not, as venues, start to reopen, but they're not fully, what the capacity is going to be like. And part of the problem is that, like, the show itself is theatric in nature still, and we have all these plans as to what to do with the show. But if we're limited because of COVID restrictions, or if the stage is too small, or whatever the case may be, it's going to be hard to put on that show. And so we want to be able to give the fans of the music, like, the best experience possible. And so we're trying to figure out the details behind that before we jump headfirst into it. Again, like I was saying before, you do shows to promote an album, but in COVID times, it's more like you do whatever you can to promote an album outside of what's out of your means right now.
Yeah.
And for the second album, we actually already started working on that.
Oh wow.
Okay.
Yeah. So now that the A New Era album is on its way, and it's like pretty much done, with just a few like tweaks here and there, and we're working on that, currently with Teeds and Tanner. While they're doing that, and while we're working on that, when I get home from there, I am working on the second album, which is going to be called The New Normal, and it's going to be a direct continuation from where A New Era leaves off, as far as the storyline goes. Okay. And it's going to be the same concept as storyline at the beginning, storyline at the end, and in between is going to just be like regular songs. But The New Normal is going to be set up where, like, I already recorded the first 4 songs as demos. And the first song is called Pentagon Approved, and it's about how, like, at the beginning of this year, when the Pentagon said that the footage that they found of the unidentified flying object and all that. So it's basically, since, like, I am that character and I'm from outer space and I crash land and all that stuff, that's basically, like, I'm saying, like, I'm Pentagon approved. I've sealed the deal is one of the lines. I'm like, and from there it goes into the storyline songs, and right before the rest of the album kicks in, I'm talking to the character Tommy from A New Era, which is the kid that's, like, trying to contact me. Yeah. And he finally finds me, he picks me up, and he brings me back to base to, like, help me patch up and all that, because I crash landed. And I say, so what's been happening with Earth lately? And then it kicks into the album, and all the songs on the album are everything that has happened in the past year and a half. It's sort of like a memoir to one of the worst years and a half, in history. Yeah. Or at least in our lifetime, you know. For now, right? We still got a lot of life to go. Let's see what else comes.
Can't wait to see what's next.
Yeah, let's see what
coming up next year.
Yeah, let's see what 2022 brings, right?
But I'm really excited for the second album, because it's got a very this one's a lot more streamlined in sound.
What is what are some of the themes of the song that you would say? Like the upcoming album, what are some of the themes?
New album?
Yeah.
So it does jump from thing to thing, because it's, again, like, kind of recapping my life as it stands, like, in the past, like, 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
Concessions was written about going to Rocky Horror Picture Show on midnight, like when they do the shadow casting and stuff. Political Bukkake is just my stance on politics, essentially, just that, they all suck. And,
That's true.
Songs of Serenity was about alcoholism. Streets of Havoc was about my, experience with filming that movie. Drugs and Cosmetics was probably the one that was furthest removed from, like, any real, like, story, because it was literally just, I went to go see Beetlejuice the musical with my parents.
Yeah.
In New York at the Winter Garden Theater, and as we were walking down the street, on the street corner, there was this really, really old store that was called just Drugs and Cosmetics. And so it's like it was clearly like one of those stores that have been there decades ago.
Yeah.
And so I took a picture of the when it was lit up, like the neon sign late at night. I said that was going to originally be the single cover, but we never actually got around to releasing it as a single. I think just because we had released so many singles to that point, we didn't want to give the whole album away.
Yeah.
But I basically just ran with the idea that it was going to be about this drag queen who sells her body on that street corner to pay for her coke and for her beauty supplies. And so that entire song is just talking about her like taking all these old rich men up to a hotel room and basically just jacking their wallets after she sleeps with them, and then going back down to the corner and buying drugs, buying makeup palettes and all that stuff. So I don't know why that like came to mind. I guess it was just like I'm from Brooklyn. And just going back there every time I meet like all these colorful people, and I'm like, I wish I had like grown up here. Like I wish that I was still in this area.
Yeah.
And I spent a lot of summers with my father in Staten Island. That was another whole, the people over there are as colorful as they come.
Yeah. They can be, yes.
And so I just that idea popped in my head, just like looking at the people and like watching other people taking pictures of that sign, and so I was just ran with that. So that one doesn't have as much like legitimate relevance to my life outside of the fact that I just saw the sign and that's what came to mind.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, the theme overall is just the whole space idea, KK Reaper, Adrift in Space, which came from like Songs of Serenity was one of the first songs we wrote, and since it was about the alcoholism and since I talked about how it felt like I was in orbit and I felt like just adrift, I didn't know where I was headed or what was going to happen next, especially after I got sober and my body was kind of like readjusting itself. I was like I don't know. I feel genuinely like in outer space. And so technically the first thing that we recorded in Tanner's house was Conception, which was literally just like, the prelude to Orbit.
Yeah.
But I was playing it just because like I was like, this is what my head sounds like right now. Like this is that echoey sound, that chamber sound.
Yeah.
I was like, this is just where my brain's at. And so the idea of KK stuck in orbit, going from planet to planet, and each planet kind of destroying itself, has the underlying meaning of like, these were all the chapters in my life. This is how I fucked up at some point, or somebody else fucked up, and this is like how it ended. This is why I'm here.
Yeah.
And so in the album, when I get stuck in space, that's essentially like where I was at the end of all that, when I finally did sober up and I was like, my brain was drying out a little bit and I was coming back to reality, and when I crash land, when I get pulled into Earth's gravitational pull, the symbolism behind that was basically that I finally realized who my true friends were, and I realized like I had family and friends that were there for me, that were there through all of that. And then there, when I was starting to get sober, when I left Carney's, when all this shit went down, and I didn't even realize this until after the album was pretty much completely made. And as I was listening to the tracks in order, I was like, holy shit. Like, I thought Songs of Serenity was just the one song about this, but this whole album is basically exactly, it's a metaphor for what happened.
Yeah.
I crash landed from outer space, from where my brain was, into people who actually cared about me enough to, pick me up when I was down. When I crashed, I was basically like left for dead, and then this character Tommy comes and picks me up and brings me back to base, and he's got people that have been waiting for me to, come over, that, come back to Earth. And so that was like the metaphor for all my friends, like looking at me, seeing that I was going through all these hard times, seeing that I was killing myself, and then being like, just come back, like just come back to reality. So that's the, the underlying message of the whole thing.
Interesting stuff.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to ramble.
No, that's great. No, and you bring up the whole listening to the album in full. Yeah, no, I really see it, and I love listening to albums in full and just hearing like everything flow and like hearing the metaphors and everything from song to song.
Right.
I find that I feel like that has more joy for me than really anything,
right.
because I love listening to someone's craft like from start to finish.
Yeah.
Because like yeah, people can listen to a song here, listen to a song there, but like when you first get that album, you buy that album, you got it, you put it into your CD drive if you have one, and
Yeah.
you listen to the first track, and you just get into it, and you just listen to how like what they were thinking, like when they were making each song, what they wanted to do to go from song to song, and where they wanted to place these tracks.
Yeah.
In the specific order that they did. I always think a lot about that stuff. I always think about like how cool it is like to be doing that kind of stuff.
I appreciate that because not a lot of people in today's day and age appreciate the value of what goes into,
And there's a lot,
I mean, even just you get past the music part and you're like, the songs themselves take all that time to produce and all the production
it's like
that
people
goes
listen
into
to
them.
a song and they don't realize all the work that's being put into making that song.
Right. But even just like what Mike was saying, like the factor of like the placement in the album.
Yeah.
Even just that.
Every
is
little
like,
detail is something.
Yeah,
It's a lot of work.
you look at like, and especially one of the hardest things with A New Era was like, where do I put these songs in concession of each other, because they were so vastly different. Like I didn't want it to be so jumpy that you were like taken out of it. So yeah, right. Like it was just like I had the storyline of Conception, Orbit, and then suddenly Transmissions comes in, and it's this little like groovy piece that you just came out of Orbit that was like a fucking like heavy metal song.
Yeah.
And so it was at the beginning I was like, all right, now what is next? Like I put Concessions after Transmissions because I was like, that seems like the fitting.
Yeah.
Then you go to like Political, and Political's a little bit heavier, and it kind of just like balances out.
Makes
sense.
Like even just that, all the art that goes into making a CD or a vinyl or a cassette, like the artwork that goes into it, right down to the packaging. Like if you're really dead set on it, and again, that's another like word of advice that I would say: never put out a product half-assed. Like never even when you think like, oh, I got all my music here, like it sounds good, and you get in your mind like that's it. That's like the tip of the iceberg. You want to be able to have the artwork have the artwork look professional. You want the packaging to look professional. You want the advertising to look professional. Like you don't want to look less than your best in any facet of what you're doing for the album, because then that one thing is going to be the difference between one fan or not.
Yeah.
If I make a great album, but I put out that, if I put out that promo and I didn't do all the editing I did to the green screen and stuff, and you can like very clearly see that there's like green screen behind me, people are going to look at that and be like, all right, well the promo's shit, so the album's probably shit.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
if you don't put your 100% in every single aspect of anything you do, like regardless if it's an album, if it's, a book, whatever, if you don't put 100% in every single part of that, like then, no one's going to take it as seriously. Because you're not taking it seriously. If you're just half-assing it, then it's not going to come out the way that you want it.
And that's the whole thing with the promotional aspect that we were talking about earlier. The fact that promotional doing promotion has become such a critical part of it, between COVID, between all the new social media apps that are coming out and all this stuff. And you have to get past that learning curve, but then you also have to be able to do it well. Like you can't just go on, like I do TikToks now to some extent, and I'm like, I know these aren't great, but this is like the best I can do right now because I'm still learning the app.
I'm still even learning how to do YouTube, do the YouTube shorts. They're kind of similar to TikToks, but how the editor works for it is weird, and I've never really used it before. We've only really done like 2 real YouTube shorts,
right?
But like we've done shorts before without the YouTube Shorts editor and stuff. We just take a video on my phone and then just edit it in like a photo, the Adobe Lightroom or whatever, the free run, and then just put it up. But like now you can actually use like an editor, and so trying to learn that is a task in its own. And once you get there, like then you can really make some good stuff. And like just practicing and putting out new stuff, getting better each time you do it, like is gonna send you miles.
And it's definitely it's a little unfair to some of the people that are like content creators and they really want to push their stuff, and then these companies, not to say that they can't make their they want to make their money back, but like there's certain programs that they made their money and then some, and they're still like $600 for basically like a toy of a program, you know? And it's like, how are you gonna do people like that? Like you already made your money, you made interest on the product that you made. Like there are some companies that I'm like Reaper for audio recording, they after they made their money on their product, dropped their price, like cut it in half.
Really?
Yeah, because they wanted people to be able to use the product, you know? So to that extent, you know, like for certain people, it's like work with what you got to the best of your ability, and try to make it as best as you can. That's the only unfortunate thing for certain people. You know, obviously the best that they can with what they have is not always top tier enough for people to look into it further. But, you know, that's just an it's what happens when an unstoppable force meets an immovable object.
There
like
it is.
you can never convince these companies to drop their price like that.
No, yeah, no. That's because they're just more focused upon, you know, their money, their you know, return on investment.
Right.
But and technically, so like are all of us in a sense. Like if you buy
Yeah.
something, we want, you know, to make sure we're making our return on this that we had bought.
Yeah.
Or
I guess
you know,
I can't really say that to that extent, because it would be the equivalent of saying like I made my money back on my album and now here it is for 10 cents, like, you know, just giving it away.
Yeah.
I guess in that regard you're right. I've seen companies that have done that, and that's why I hold it to that standard. Like I said, like with Reaper, like that, you know, cutting down their price after they made their interest back, like stuff like that. But I do get what you're saying. I mean, you're still trying to make profit to some extent.
Yeah, exactly.
No, great stuff.
Yeah, no, yeah. This was really fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I enjoyed this.
Yeah. With all that said, where can people find you and your music?
So kkreaper.com is pretty much up and running.
Okay.
It is the only thing that we haven't gotten working yet is the merch store, but we're getting there. Otherwise, you can just find me at pretty much everywhere at kkreaper, Facebook, Instagram, all those things. It's all the same handle. And if you are interested in purchasing any merch, you can message me there, and I'll be happy to set up an order for you.
Yeah, guys. Everything about him will be in the link below.
Yeah, well,
in the description.
I'll have all of the links to all of his social medias and stuff in the description. Definitely go down there if you definitely want to get a CD or even go to kkreaper.com. I'll have that there too. Definitely go there if you want to get a CD or get any merch. Definitely go and support.
Thanks.
With all that said, we're going to end it up here, and we're going to see you guys in the next podcast.
See you guys around.
Bye, Mom.
With you.